everyone, welcome to the Support the Spectrum channel. My name is Ryann Sutera. I'm a neurodiversity affirming speech language pathologist and owner of Support the Spectrum. And today we're going to be talking about how to teach new language skills. Teaching new things really depends on the personality of the learner, the behaviors of the learner. A lot of teaching has to do with individualizing the care to each learner. However, there are some common threads that all learners benefit from no matter what neurotype. Most of our clients here at Support the Spectrum are neurodivergent, whether they are autistic, ADHD, PDA, PTSD, etc., etc. However, I've had experience teaching neurotypical people as well, and I will tell you the framework of teaching new language skills in a way that promotes autonomy and regulation, as well as keeps the brain in a relaxed learning state, are very similar. Okay, so lesson number 1, you want to keep language simple and direct. This seems obvious, but we honestly don't realize how often we are adding complexity to language and direction. One of the most supportive things you can do as an educator is promoting predictability. When you set up the expectations, when you're clear and direct, when you're using simple language and also using visual supports to help aid your language, you're providing so much clarity. You are decreasing the cognitive load that that learner has to put on. So what do I mean by this? This is what I mean. You don't want to ask rhetorical questions. Things like, do you think that was a good choice? Can you use your words? Are you nuts? You may think that's funny, silly in the moment, trying to make light of a perhaps miscommunication, but these things are actually really confusing for people learning new language skills. They can even cause that learner to be put into a stress response because it's just confusing. Those questions don't actually teach anything because the learner doesn't know how to respond. Another way to increase clarity is by avoiding using negations. Things like, don't run, don't do that, stop yelling, that kind of stuff. Because in that case, you're telling the learner what not to do instead of teaching them what to do. So you want to replace them with direct alternatives. If you wanted them to quiet down, for example, you would lower your voice and you'd say, okay, we're talking like this right now. Or if you wanted them to communicate in a more polite way, you would model without expectations, please can I have that? Or if you wanted them to be more fluent, you would show them a fluency strategy, maybe like slow rate. I hear you. I wonder if we should go now or later. So instead of slow down, we do not talk like that. It's showing the learner exactly how they could alternatively talk. But we will continue to nitpick that point, modeling without expectations, because it's a very important skill when teaching. And then lastly, you don't want to add unnecessary details when you're trying to teach a new skill. Extra language just becomes kind of background noise rather than being truly processed in that moment. Short statements are easier to process, and when you're in a learning state, that's an anxious state. So I really should drive that point home. All the strategies we're going to talk about today are prioritizing keeping the brain in an open learning state rather than a shut down anxious state. When we increase anxiety, we decrease learning potential. So we're trying to flip that around with the strategies we talk about today. So 1 was keeping language simple and direct. 2 is modeling without expectations. This is so important. All learning happens through exposure and experience. So you want to begin modeling that language skill without putting pressure on that learner to use it right away. That's what modeling without expectations means. Say the phrase yourself, do the action yourself, show the strategy use yourself, but don't expect imitation right away. The brain needs time to observe that pattern and learn it independently through experimentation, integrating, putting it in the schemas. I mean, we can talk more about the actual brain science of it, and I think I'll touch into it a little bit. In the case of learning new language or language skills, we're talking about receiving that information through observation. We're talking about that them being integrated into the brain and integrated into schemas. Schemas are groups, almost like little file folders in the brain is how I like to think about it. So each individual person absorbs information, it gets put into the file that makes the most sense to them, that can relate to maybe past experience or relate to future goals. And integration is one thing, but then being able to retrieve that integrated information, formulate how it is going to be used, and then actually respond with that learned skill takes time. Once you feel like you've modeled that skill, that language, once you feel like it has been integrated into a schema, once you see that learner starting to formulate and attempting to use that language skill independently, that is when you can apply expectations. Let's put this in a real life example, okay? Let's say that you have a learner that's using a speech generating device and they are learning the skill of how to address someone by name to gain their attention. Hugely important skill. If they have the people programmed into their device, you might start by using that in a fun activity, a fun play-based activity where we are gaining the attention of somebody who has their back turned using the AAC system. So me as the speech language pathologist, I'm just going to model without expectations for however long it takes that learner to start exploring that skill independently. So what do I mean by this? We're doing an activity and we have a partner, a play partner with us too, speech therapist and client. And maybe let's say the BCBA is working with us, or the PT, teacher, whoever, parent even. And they kind of have their back turned and we need them to take their turn in the game. I would model, Miss Sarah, your turn, to gain the attention and to show that skill of identifying the person's name. Now let's say we're working on this for weeks and then eventually I just am waiting. I'm waiting, expectant pause as they call it. Miss Sarah still has her back turned and the learner knows that it's Miss Sarah's turn. And I see that learner start to go to their AAC system. Maybe they are not perfect with identifying that folder yet. Maybe they're not perfect at being able to place that name yet, but they've started to go to their AAC system and they've started to look around for their people folder. And what I'm gonna do is wait, see if they get there, but if they don't, I'm just gonna hover my finger over the people folder. And then if, they're still having trouble getting there after giving them plenty of processing time, I will do it, continue to model without expectations, but let's say they open the folder. Now I'm placing expectations. Now I'm really gonna wait until they are able to do it, because they are attempting independence with that skill. So I don't want to make it seem like you can never place expectations on a learner, because challenging and putting those skills to test is part of the learning process. You can't avoid that. You can't do stuff for them at all times. You just want to wait until their brain has fully integrated and started to formulate that information. And I hope that makes sense. Kind of just simplify it. The goal is the learner's initiation. So you just want to wait until they're initiating that skill to place any kind of expectations on them. Okay, number 3 is use supports to reduce cognitive load. This kind of goes with simplifying language as well. We are only simplifying the cognitive load when we add visual supports, or things like songs, acronyms, or movement. Movement can be a really good language anchor for memory as well. A simple gesture or a sign, a picture card, a visual schedule, a short melody can really help when learning a new language skill. I'm going to give a larger example for this so that it makes a little more sense. Let's say that my learner is working on greetings. Let's say greeting people is an anxious learning experience for this person, and I'm trying to reduce the anxiety of this experience as much as possible. One, I'm going to promote predictability and I'm going to use clear, simple language. Before we even enter the room where we are going to be greeting someone, I'm going to get to their level and really talk to them and say, we are entering this room. We're going to say hi to Miss Sarah. Miss Sarah's getting a lot of screen time this episode. We're going to say hi to Miss Sarah. This is how we're going to do it. Before we even go in there, let's look at the words on our system, or let's look at this picture card of saying hi. Let's look at Miss Sarah's face. Let's shake out all the anxiety, giving it a nice motor movement anchor. Let's practice a hello song. Hello, hello, can you clap your hands? Let's use multisensory supports to help promote predictability and help that learner stay calm. I think a lot of my examples today are relating to younger learners, but this is absolutely applicable with older learners as well. For example, I have plenty of clients who are adults who are working on fluency. Fluency and crisp articulation is something that a lot of people struggle with. And so increasing fluency is a very common goal for all of us, right? One of the ways that I use visual supports to help promote this use of the strategy of sliding, which is a fluency skill that we use with people who stutter to slide out of a disfluent moment, is exactly this. Right? So I'm using a visual support to aid with that process and that strategy of sliding. And before we even work on fluency, we work on sensory regulation because our emotional state highly impacts our voice. And moving right along, we're going to talk about number 4, which is using a calm tone of voice. Using a neutral tone communicates way more than words ever can. A neutral voice communicates safety to the brain, and any type of exaggerated tone, whether it's just like a stern, like, I'm talking to you and I'm being calm, even that is not calm. It's a flight response, a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response for a lot of people. Even, a slightly like, no, I'm just disappointed that it can be very, very alarming to the brain. So do not use a harsh tone. Do not yell. Do not interrupt a train of thought. If a learner is thinking, if they're experimenting, maybe they're even making a mistake, let them finish the mistake. This is so, so important. Every single action, phrase, everything that you do as a human being is a series of neural pathway movement throughout the brain, okay? When the brain is moving and you're going through it and you interrupt that movement by stopping someone in the middle of even a mistake, you are increasing anxiety in that moment. You have the potential to increase anxiety. You want to let them finish making that mistake and then provide intervention through modeling without expectations, through asking, how could we do that differently, after they fully finish their thought. First of all, it's just rude to interrupt people, but also it increases anxiety in the brain and it's not helpful for the learning process because their processing time is part of the learning process. Number 5, we want to set clear boundaries without blame. Boundaries are extremely helpful, clear, very neutral thing to do. You just don't want to add an accusatory response or blame in the middle of making a boundary. So I'll give you an example. A lot of times you'll be working in therapy and the learner will be having a flight response, wanting to get out of the work by talking about a different topic or shutting down. They might have a phrase response. They might not be responding to you. They might be wanting to do other things. They might be running away from you, literally. All these things happen when you are tapping on insecurities for people and tapping on difficult things that they have to learn to do. So in this case, I have to set up clear boundaries, but I have to be really respectful about it. I'm not going to say things like, you're not paying attention, you're not doing a good job. Those are both negations, right? That we want to avoid using. I would set up clear boundaries by first saying what I notice. I notice that you're looking away on the screen. I notice that you're not visually attending to what we're doing. I notice that you are speaking about off-topic things. I'm wondering why that is. 2, lead with curiosity. Is there something about this that feels frustrating? Is there something about this you don't like? So you're protecting your rapport and your relationship with that person by leading with curiosity. Maybe they're not responding to that. That does happen a lot. It takes quite some time to process why something is being pushed away for people, but you're still guiding that behavior by then following up with 3, the boundary. So you're going to say, we have to do this today. We just have to get through these next 2 pages. If you could just bear with me, then we can go and do this. A would you rather game or a board game or whatever. But you just want to at least promote the attempt at completing what you were planning to do that day. Or, you might have to edit what you were planning to do that day because it's not conducive to that learner's journey. For example, one time I was working on a book and We were working on vocab in this book, and it was a sleepover based book available on my website if you're interested. And that particular learner actually had trouble completing this book because they had bad experiences with sleepovers. I led with curiosity and found out that that was the reason why they did not want to talk about it. So we transitioned to a sports-based book, and we worked on the vocabulary in that book instead, also available on my website. So those things are really important because you might be bringing up triggers that you don't even know about. So leading with curiosity, but still setting boundaries. We are going to do this structured book. We're just going to work on a different one is really, really important. So number 6 is respecting autonomy and respecting regulation. I think, but we've been talking about that a lot in the sense that every single thing that I've been suggesting in this video is to promote autonomy and regulation, because if we increase anxiety, we decrease learning potential. So we need to flip that. But one major point that I need to make with this is that if your learner does need a break, you cannot block breaks. Please do not push through overload, okay? You can co-create a plan that respects a movement break, a sensory break, regulation, processing time, and still create firm boundaries to get that work done. And then, of course, you want to join in on these breaks too to promote connection, rapport, all the good things. Show that learning does not require pressure to be meaningful. And number 7, the last one for today, is do not overtake the task. Now, this is easier said than done. I know in so many cases you do not have the time to teach new language skills to learners. Maybe you're busy getting out the door, maybe you're in the middle of a grocery store. There's so many examples of times where you just need to get stuff done. I'm not talking about those moments. I'm talking about the moments when you really do have the time, when you have the time to not take over a skill, but let the learner experiment with the skill. Please take that time. Promoting independence is the number one thing to do when we are teaching new skills, but of course that takes a while. There are many ways to support without taking over. There are many ways to give just enough help to get the learner to get through it and process it, but ultimately taking the time to let them do it. So if you implement direct language, boundary making, modeling without expectations, sensory support, calm tone, respect for autonomy, avoiding negations, all these strategies that we learned today, I guarantee you that you will see at least some progress with your language learner. But if you still feel like there is a roadblock in your journey, please message us at Support the Spectrum. We really do want to help you, and we can meet you for consultation to individualize the care of your learner. Teaching is hard. You do not have to be perfect at it. Nobody is perfect at it, but there are certainly some better ways to get things done, and we really want to help you with that. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs it, and I will see you guys in the next video.